Hey, hello again, everybody. Today we are going to look at the First Amendments of the Bill of Rights, and we're going to be looking at the protections provided within the Bill of Rights. So we've been looking at uh, you know, how the Constitutional Convention came up with the compromises, and later on, the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists they believed that there was a confusion, and the Anti-Federalists really held out for this Bill of Rights because they really did not trust the government. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to check out the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights protects our rights from the government. So when we look at the Bill of Rights, uh, you know, I think everybody understands these individual freedoms, freedom of speech, and I think that the important part about this is that you know you there is a limit, there are limits. So when people say, oh, I have freedoms to do this and this and this, there are limits. So these rights, they fall into three categories. We have individual freedoms, we have protections against abuse of power, and we have the rights of the accused. So basically we have a list of rights, of individual freedoms. We have certain things that the government cannot do that protects us from their abuse, and we have the rights of accused. That is, if you are accused of a crime, this is how things must be handled. All of those are spelled out in the Bill of Rights, and we will be summarizing them today. So, all right. So the first big block we want to talk about is the First Amendment, and so all these ideas, freedom of religion, freedom to assemble, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of petition. These are all First Amendment rights. Now, the first one we want to talk about is the separation of church and state, or the separation between church and state. The separation of church and state is a principle that many governments have had for a while, and it means that the government will not interfere with your religious practices as long as they don't interfere with other people's practices. Okay? That is, if you want to go to a temple, or if you want to go to a mosque, if you want to go to church, that really doesn't impact anybody else's life. So you're free to do that. You're free to go there. But if you have a religion that believes in, say, like human sacrifice, well, that may not be okay because it interferes with someone else's right to live. So that's a no go. But most religious practices are covered by the freedom of religion. Our second right within the First Amendment, citizens can assemble in peaceful groups for any purpose. So we, as a government, cannot limit the right of groups to get together so long as the intentions of that group are peaceful. But if a group gets together and they start to riot and they create danger to both property and people, well, they don't have the right to do that because it is not a peaceful meeting. So all peaceful assembly is allowed. So if you watch some of the protests over the last year, you know that some of those protests turned quite violent and deadly, and the police had to go in. So they were not, that is not a peaceful assembly. Okay, so speech and press. So you have the freedom of speech. You cannot say anything that you wish, however, because you can say anything you want to a certain degree, but you cannot slander someone else's reputation or tell lies to damage someone else's reputation. Slander is not covered by freedom of speech. And slander is when you tell lies intentionally. That is, you told a lie, you knew you were telling a lie, and you did that in order to damage the reputation of an individual or a group. That is not protected free speech. There are a number of other things that are protected as well, like if your speech creates a clear and present danger. This is the famous yelling fire in the theater. So that is, if the speech that you say is going to result in dangerous situations, for somebody at that moment, that is not going to be tolerated. Now, public figures, there is a little bit of wiggle room there. As a public figure, you may be susceptible to to certain things that others may not be, would tolerate. But even then, if you say something that's going to harm someone's reputation, then then you're talking about slandering someone's name, and that is not going to happen. All right, so the freedom of the press, and really any form of media we're talking about, not just newspapers, it's new, TV news programs, websites, blogs, all that counts as press. And the press can criticize the government without any fear of punishment. That's what they're supposed to do. Uh, you know, Nazi Germany, one of the first things the Nazis did was to dismantle the media. They didn't want the media questioning them. You know, but again, whatever the media says, it has to be true, or they at least have to believe that it's true. If they print stuff that they know is false and they print it to harm the government, that is going to be called libel, and it's very similar to slander, and it is not allowed. So if you're libelous, uh, you're not going to be able to. That's not going to be able to fly here. Okay, so all right, the right to petition. Citizens have the right to contact their representatives and suggest changes to existing laws or even to propose a law. It doesn't need to be a congressman that proposes the law. So one of the things I hope you learn this year in civics is, the participation part. The civics project, we're trying to get you to contact people, and one of those people you may have contacted was your representative. And so, I can propose a law, you can propose a law. We just have to submit it to a congressman to be officially filed and introduced to the House of Representatives. But we have the right to do that. We have the right to call our congressman and tell them, like, hey, we don't like how you voted on this bill, or you know what, I hope you lose the next election because you're a lousy congressman. You can do that. That's all protected. All right, protections against abuse of power. The Second through Fifth Amendments really focus on protecting citizens from abuse of power by the government. So the best known example of this is probably the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment allows citizens to bear arms and form militias. Now, militias are informal armies, and you can form one of those if you want. I mean, this right has been interpreted to allow guns for personal protection as well, and that's not in the Constitution that you as an individual can own a gun. But over the years, that has been broadened. It started off with these militias, and now the interpretation of the Constitution. You you know you can bear arms, and again, this is a right of a free state. Uh, there was always this fear in the back of the minds of the framers that if people didn't have weapons, that the government, well armed government could take over. Now, does it mean you can own a tank? No, but you can have weapons in your house for personal protection, or some people even have a license to carry. The Third Amendment allows for the forced quartering of soldiers. Some people have been trying to get this out of the Constitution for a while. This goes back to, this is one of the pet peeves of the founders. Leading up to the Constitution and the Revolution. Housings. The British forcing soldiers into people's homes. But basically, this says that the Third Amendment says that the United States government cannot tell you that you have to have members of the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, living in your house, sleeping in your beds, eating your food, etc., etc., etc. Now, if Canada were to invade and we would need to move the entire U.S. military into Massachusetts to protect us from those nasty Canadians, well, we wouldn't have enough places to have them sleep. And in that situation, the Third Amendment would not apply, and soldiers could be housed with you. Okay, so now you get to the searches and seizures in the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment ensures that police cannot enter your home without reason to believe you've committed a specific crime. So this is called probable cause. You may have seen this on a lot of those TV, law shows on TV. The police, they just can't come in there, and they have to have evidence. Then they cannot come into your house and just look for evidence. They can't say you're a bad person. We don't like you going to, we don't like you, and we're going to go through your house and we're going to find something criminal in there and we're going to throw you in jail. No, they can't do that. They have to have a specific reason to believe that you have committed a specific crime, or they just cannot come in. Likewise, another part of this is is known as the eminent domain. This idea that if there's a greater need, the government can take your land, but they have to pay you for it. Uh, you know, and so eminent domain um, has been used uh, in such situations where years ago in Rhode Island they had to expand the airport, and they had to take some homes. I think even in Medway they something to do with the sewers. They took some people's land. I think some people actually had these sewers running through their backyards. So in case of a public need, build a highway or a bridge or something like that, they can take your house. It's called eminent domain, but they have to pay you the fair market value. Okay, so protections of the accused. So the Fifth through Seventh Amendments protect those who have been accused of a crime. So if you ever find yourself in court, these are your magic amendments, assuring that the government follows certain rules when investigating a crime. Uh, that those rules are called due process, and just that's what it sounds like. It's a process. So you cannot be arrested and then thrown in jail for the rest of your life. You have to follow a process or a procedure, and we will get into this much deeper pretty soon. So, if the government doesn't follow due process, they cannot put you in jail. They can't break the law trying to prove that you broke the law. It just doesn't work that way. They have to follow the procedure. Now, when you get to the Fifth Amendment, then you're talking about uh, three big guarantees. Number one, you can't be forced to testify against yourself. So everybody, you may have heard the fifth. I take the fifth. Okay, you can't be put on the stand and forced to give your account of your own criminal activities. Okay, so you don't have to bear witness against yourself. Number two, citizens may not be held without evidence of a crime. If the authorities arrest you, there must be a reason to believe you committed a crime, and they have to have evidence, and they just can't hold you without evidence. Number three, citizens can't be tried for the same crime twice. This is called double jeopardy. Don't not to be confused with the television game show. Double jeopardy means if you were tried in a court for a crime and you were found innocent, you cannot be tried for that crime again. Say they find evidence later on that directly implicates you or says you're guilty. Once your crime has been decided in court, that's it. They can't do it again. That's called double jeopardy. Okay, so some of the more famous high profile cases, like O.J. Simpson. People have been waiting for him to basically say, yeah, you know what, I did it, and I got away with it. Okay, trials and punishments. Citizens are entitled to a trial by jury in criminal cases. Sometimes you don't want a jury trial. Maybe you feel that the what you've done is going to cause the jury to go against you, so you want the judge to be the decider of fact. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to a speedy trial. This is all covered in the Sixth Amendment. Uh, a trial by jury means that you have a trial with a group of your peers, people that are like you in your age group, okay? Not government officials who are trying to determine your guilt. You have the right to an attorney. When you cannot afford one, the state will provide you with one. Your trial has to be speedy. Uh, you know, this doesn't mean that the trial can't last for a long period of time. This means that you can't be in jail for 3, 4, 5 years waiting to go to trial. That is, you violated the Constitution there. Your right to a speedy trial. Okay, now when you talk about punishments cannot exceed the crime. So we're not talking about Hammurabi's code here. Okay, an eye for an eye. So if you stole a loaf of bread, they're not going to give you 20 years in jail, and that punishment cannot exceed the crime. It can't be solitary confinement or forced to watch musical movies from the 1950s, because that would be considered cruel and unusual and excessive punishment. So if you commit a heinous crime like murder, that's different. But if you stole a piece of candy from a store, they're not going to give you 10 years in jail. It just doesn't it just doesn't work that way. Okay, so now when you get to the Ninth and the 10th Amendments, the Ninth Amendment uh, says that there are certain rights that are just not limited uh, to the ones that are mentioned here. So, for example, privacy. Nowhere in the Constitution is the word privacy used. However, the Ninth Amendment has included privacy, and it has made that a right, civil right, in essence. Now, the 10th Amendment, you're talking about government powers which are not held exclusively by the federal government or denied to the states, are reserved to the states. So, in other words, if it's not something that the federal government has specific power to do, then the states can do that. So if the Constitution doesn't say it specifically, and then the state, like it says here, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, no, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So if there's nothing in there that says that only the federal government can do this, that power goes to the states. Okay, so that's all I have for you this time. And so going forward, we're going to get into the First Amendment. We're going to look at the freedom of speech. Then we're going to look at the rest of the amendments. We're going to take a look at a bunch of cases, and probably going to have a little bit of a debate on hate speech too. Okay, so I'll see you again pretty soon.